My mother-in-law was a warm, funny, amazing woman. She and my wife were incredibly close. Sadly, she passed away when our son was just 4 months old. Fast forward a few years, our son is 3 now. We're living in this old 1930s house in Pasadena. One evening, I was giving him a bath. He was sitting there, happily splashing around, when he suddenly started looking past me, behind me, like he saw something. First to one side, then the other. Then he asked, "Why does Grandma call Mummy that funny name?" I froze. At first, I thought he meant my mum, but then he repeated it more clearly. "Why does Grandma call Mummy that funny name?" And I just stared at him. It was a nickname, a silly, affectionate name my wife's mum used to call her when she was little. Something private, intimate, something we never said out loud, especially not around him. So I asked, "Where did you hear that?" He shrugged. "The farmer told me." "Who?" "The farmer. He's my friend." Later that night, I told my wife everything. She burst into tears from the memories and from the fact that our son couldn't possibly know that nickname. A few days later, I was working from home. My wife was at her retail job, and I heard our son talking in his room. It wasn't baby talk either. It was a conversation. Yes. No. I don't know. And then, laughter. I went into his room and asked who he was talking to. He said, "The farmer. We're playing." Every horror movie I'd ever seen came rushing back into my brain. I asked, panicking, "Where is he?" "Show me." And my son calmly replied, "He left when you came in." That night, I told my wife. She was just as shaken. We agreed, if it ever happened again, we'd do something. Anything. A few nights later, deep in the night, we heard our son speaking again. "Grandma says we can't be friends anymore." We rushed to his room. He was just sitting in bed. We asked if everything was okay, and he said it again. "Grandma says I'm not allowed to play with the farmer anymore." And that was it. He never mentioned the farmer again, ever. He's 13 now, and he remembers none of it. But we remember it all. When my brother and I were about 4 or 5, we lived in a house that was nearly 100 years old. One day, we were walking up the stairs and saw a tall man in a black coat and a top hat. He was heading into the living room, just to the left at the bottom of the staircase. We were scared, but we figured maybe Dad was playing a prank on us, so we called out to him. And that's when things got really creepy. Both Mom and Dad came out of the kitchen. The kitchen was on the other side of the house, completely separated from the living room. I hadn't thought about this in years. We never really talked about it. But about a month ago, my daughter suddenly asked me, "Dad, do you believe in ghosts?" I told her this story. And just seconds later, my phone rang. It was my brother. He said, "I was just talking to my partner about paranormal stuff. Do you remember the guy in the top hat?" Here's a terrifying story that actually happened to me. I was about 10 or 11 years old, and I used to stay up late all the time. That night, when I finally got into bed, I still felt uneasy. I wrapped myself in all my blankets and pressed my body against the wall. My double bed was right up against it. I lay there, wide awake, for maybe an hour, until I heard something, a sound, a quiet, muffled sobbing. I focused on it, hoping it was just my imagination, or that maybe I'd already fallen asleep. But after a few minutes, I decided to find out what it was. I turned over in bed and saw a woman in a dress standing at the far end of my room. She was crying, with her face buried in her hands. Her hair was tangled, her dress torn and shredded, and she was tall. Her head nearly touched the ceiling, which meant she had to be at least 8 feet tall. A few seconds passed. Then she looked right at me and screamed, but the scream sounded distant, as if it came from far away. She locked eyes with me, then turned around and walked through the wall. I didn't sleep at all that night. I must have been 6 or 7 years old, spending the night at my grandparents' house. I was lying on the couch, trying to fall asleep, when I heard a whisper. They had a photo on the living room wall, a picture of my aunt, and the whisper was coming from that photo. The picture was speaking in her exact voice. She asked me if I'd been behaving and told me typical auntie stories. It sounds creepy, but somehow I wasn't scared at all. One night, the aunt in the photo told me to wake up my grandpa. She said it was for something very important. So I did. But when he realized there was no one in the photo, he got mad and started yelling at me. In between his threats and insults, he suddenly noticed someone moving outside the window. He grabbed his gun and told me to stay in the room with Grandma. A minute or two later, we heard a gunshot. Turns out, there was a prison about 20 miles from their house. That night, 3 young men had killed a guard and escaped. They were scoping out my grandparents' place, planning to steal the truck and anything they could fit in it. But Grandpa saw them first. One of the guys ended up with a bullet in his shoulder. To this day, I have no idea why that damn photo was talking to me. They'd never had ghost experiences before, and never again after. But it was that photograph that saved all of us that night. I live in the north of Switzerland. We've got lots of old military bunkers here, left over from World War II. When I was about 7 or 8 years old, 3 friends and I decided to explore one of them. It was built on a hill in a small forest. The main door was jammed shut, so we had to take it apart ourselves. We found a huge log nearby and used it as a battering ram. After a lot of effort, the door finally gave way. There was a peephole on the door, about 4 inches wide. We opened it and shined our flashlight into the darkness. What we saw was a long, ruined corridor with rooms on both sides. We couldn't even see the end. It was too far away. We took turns looking inside until one of my friends said, "There's a small light at the end of the hallway." But when I looked, there was no light. I pushed him aside and took another look. What I saw made my skin crawl. There wasn't a small light. It looked more like a flashlight, pointed directly at me, and behind it was a human silhouette. I stepped back a few paces and said, "There's someone in there." And just then, someone, or something, knocked on the door from the inside. We panicked, screamed, ran. I was so scared I ran all the way home and locked the front door behind me. The next day at school, my friends and I talked it over. We figured some older kids must have been messing with us. But a week later, we went back to the bunker. This time, The door was completely welded shut, and the creepiest part, you could clearly see that it had been opened from the inside. We didn't say a word. We just turned around and left. There was only one entrance. No way someone could have opened it, then welded it shut again in secret. I still live in the same area, and 20 years later, I went back to that bunker. Everything looked exactly the same. We moved into a new house a few months ago. During the purchase process, we learned that the previous tenant had suddenly passed away, right in the middle of the living room. He was around 40 years old. That didn't stop the sale. The paperwork went through, and soon we moved in. That's when things got interesting. On the very day we moved in, our 2-year-old daughter started talking about a ghost that lived in the house. Now, to be fair, she was just 2. Kids that age are very impressionable. Plus, Halloween had just passed, and she had this picture book full of spooky images she loved flipping through. So at first, we brushed it off. Probably just her imagination. But she kept mentioning the ghost. Constantly. She said he was in her little playhouse, down in the basement. That he stood on the staircase. That he stayed in the corner of the room. She didn't seem afraid. If anything, she treated him like a friend. So I didn't worry. Even if the ghost was real, he didn't seem harmful. I'd even talk to him out loud sometimes. I'd say things like, "You're welcome to stay as long as you like, but you can leave if that makes you happier." I believed, maybe 30%, that there was actually something there. Until one morning changed everything. We were rushing to get our daughter ready for daycare. It was dark and rainy outside. She walked up to me and said very casually, "The ghost is in the backyard right now." Then she added, "It's his birthday today. I want to sing him happy birthday." So we did. We sang to the ghost, wished him well, and went on with our day. Later that evening, just out of sheer curiosity, I swear, it occurred to me to look up the obituary of the man who died in our home. Can you guess? It was his damn birthday. This happened just a couple of weeks ago, and it's easily the creepiest thing that's ever happened to me. So first, some context. I used to babysit a 2-year-old boy whenever his parents went on date nights. Sweet kid, very quiet. One time, my friend watched him instead, and the boy started talking about his grandpa. But here's the thing, according to the parents, he'd never even met his grandfather. He passed away before the boy was born. So naturally, after that, every time I babysat him, I was just waiting for something weird to happen. And of course, it did. One night, we were sitting in the living room when the boy started pointing at the blank wall across from us. "Grandpa," he said. Then again, "Grandpa." That's all he would say. Now, this kid barely spoke at all. He was only 2. So I didn't ask him any questions. I just tried to change the subject and distract myself, because honestly, I was getting creeped out. That's when he opened his eyes really wide, gripped the chair he was sitting on. His teeth started chattering, and he began to shake. I almost lost it. I scooped him up and said loudly, "Okay, time to watch a bedtime movie." Later that night, I was carrying him upstairs to his room when I noticed the front door was unlocked. Now, I always lock the door. I'm paranoid. I double check every time. So I locked it, jiggled the handle like I always do, and brought the kid to bed. He was already dozing off by then. I stayed in his room for maybe 20 minutes until he fell asleep. Then I tiptoed out and started heading back downstairs. The front door is right at the bottom of the staircase. And guess what? It was wide open. My heart dropped. I immediately thought of every horror movie I've ever seen and searched the entire house. I even checked the kids' room again. Some of the bedrooms upstairs I didn't bother with because I had a full view while I was in his room. No one could have snuck past. Once I was sure the kid was safe, I went back downstairs and just sat, watching TV, jumping at every little noise. It was the weirdest, most unnerving night of my life. And when his parents asked me to babysit again, I hesitated for a full hour before saying yes. Something saved me after a car accident, and I still don't know what it was. We were heading home after a long, exhausting trip. The road was icy, and I lost control of the car going around a curve. We hit a huge rock. I wasn't wearing a seatbelt that day. The impact launched me straight through the windshield. 1 second I was inside the car. The next, I was lying in some bushes off the side of the road. I tried to get up, but the pain in my shoulder was unbearable. Later, I'd find out I had broken my collarbone. Then I blacked out. I don't know how long I was unconscious, but at some point, I felt a light above me, even though my eyes were closed. Someone was standing there. It was my dad. He lifted me effortlessly, like I weighed nothing, and led me back toward the car where my mom and brother were. I remember his arms, strong, solid, familiar. But then I came to and realized that couldn't have happened. Later, I talked with my brother. He told me our dad had been seriously injured in the crash. So was my mom. So was he. No one even knew where I was. They assumed I was dead, maybe pinned under the car. And there were no flashlights in the car, not even one. So who or what found me? I honestly have no idea. I still tell this story hoping someone can give me an explanation, something that makes sense. My collarbone healed a little crooked, by the way. There's a small bump on my shoulder now. It's a permanent reminder that something or someone saved me that night. There's this old bridge in my hometown. Local legend says a young girl drowned in the river beneath it. And if you go there at the right time, you can still hear her scream. Back in high school, my friends and I used to go ghost hunting. There wasn't much else to do. Our town had a population of maybe 6,000. Half of them were inmates or psych patients from nearby facilities. So one night, we headed out to the bridge. It was around 3 a.m. We sat there for maybe 20 minutes. Nothing happened. So of course we started teasing each other. This is stupid. What are we even doing here? And then it happened. A scream. Not just any scream. The most blood-curdling, high-pitched, soul-freezing scream I've ever heard. And it didn't stop. It just didn't stop. Even as we ran for the car, it kept going. Even as we drove away, we could still hear it. But that wasn't the worst part. Right when the scream began, my buddy and I took off. We were the first ones to head toward the parking lot. To get there, you had to walk downhill and pass underneath the bridge. Halfway there, we both started running because we saw something. At the exact same moment, I've never asked him what he saw. I didn't need to, because I saw it too. It was a girl, crawling on all fours, She was racing through the woods like some kind of animal. And to this day, I still get chills thinking about it. I don't talk about that night much. People laugh. They don't believe me. But I saw her. We both did. And I've never gone back to that bridge again.